blue dollar was trading like 1,000 pesos to $1. And I think just a year before that, it was like 500. So it's like every year, there's like 100% inflation. I had a real sense of peace that like my family would be okay. This is something very unique. This is not something that has ever existed before. You lose your job, and you can fall back on something. And if I needed it to, for whatever reason, I could spend it without anybody's permission. And he was like, okay, how do I pay you back? And I got him on Bitcoin. And the fact that he was able to send me Bitcoin to pay me back for this fishing reel with like no banks involved, he was able to stay in the comfort of his own living room. I'm a Christian, and one of the 10 commandments is that thou shalt not steal. When you use a money where the purchasing power can be stolen from you, that's like a clear reason why you shouldn't use it. But in the fiat world, it's just you're always getting stolen from. That guarantee is not there, right? You don't see any appreciation.
Hi, Matthew. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Good morning, Robin. Yeah, things are going great.
Really cool to have you on the show and on the podcast. You also have a great podcast yourself, and I think that's how I actually found you. I'm not sure how I discovered you, but for the few people that haven't seen your stuff, and also I haven't seen that much of your stuff, maybe give us a brief overview of who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I know you have a great podcast. It's what I'm aspiring to. So my podcast is called The Great Reassessment, and I think I just recorded my 41st episode. So I'm on episode 41, and I'm really proud of the guests I've been able to have. But my podcast I try to make it very eclectic. So I would say it's like 50% Bitcoin content, but then I also delve into topics of religion, history, medicine. And with some guests who are non-Bitcoiners, I try to squeeze it in towards the end of the podcast. Like I interviewed a famous farmer here in the United States. His name's Joel Salatin. And he was a fascinating conversation because of the way he talks about farming and agriculture and circumventing the industrial food complex and sort of decentralizing farming again. I see the Bitcoin connections really easily. And so at the very end of our podcast, I try to inquire about Bitcoin and see if he has ever studied it. And I do that with a lot of my guests, but really we're just plunging the depths of the other rabbit holes that exist out there, whether it's medicine, history, and economics, Bitcoin.
That's really cool. And what is the great reassessment for you? Like what do you mean by great reassessment?
Yeah, so since 2020 to now, as I've just been living my daily life and interacting with people, I sort of feel like I think everybody is sort of experiencing a similar phenomena where we are reanalyzing everything we've been told. And so there's been a lot of challenges to the status quo, whether it be a certain interpretation of something, whether it be the status quo on a monetary system, our food. And so I think a lot of people are just sort of having second thoughts about the trajectory society has been on, that government has been on. And it's my understanding, it's my instinct that it's somewhat of a great reassessment, that people are sort of searching for deeper meaning. They're searching for authenticity in ways that I would say from 2010 to 2020, people were just kind of going with the flow. But I think now people are having somewhat of a renaissance for meaning and authenticity. People are becoming self-didacts, self-learners, and taking matters into their own hands. And it's not just happening with Bitcoin, it's happening with in a lot of other areas of life. And so that's why I call the podcast The Great Reassessment, because I try to explore those areas.
It's really interesting. It's almost, I feel like that too, actually, because I think there is something bigger happening currently. We have AI, we have Bitcoin, we have more and more people having the freedom to think and critically thinking. We now also have the internet. I mean, we had the internet for a while now, but like the internet also brings us closer together. So if someone has a great idea, the great ideas spread faster than previously. And so I feel like there's a lot at stakes where things are happening and things are changing. And Bitcoin and AI is just like two major things that is like very in the face. Like you will feel it, you will hear about it, you will see it. But there's a lot of small things happening.
Mm-hmm.
For example, remote work is something we don't talk that much about, but it becomes more and more normal. These days in a company, there are so many remote workers, also like small people that are just like are freelancers in a bigger company. And the companies are getting smaller these days. Like there's those huge companies, but there are a lot more smaller companies that maybe are one person, 5 people, maybe 10 people, and they have more, and they have one niche. And so there is so many things that happen all at once. And it's kind of almost difficult to digest, like what's going on and why all those things are happening. But I think there is something bigger coming. And I think Bitcoin is just one huge change in that. But there is something more meaningful happening with our lives currently. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think COVID, the whole pandemic really kicked that off for a lot of people because they saw just how quickly things can collapse. And I think it was the catalyst for a lot of people just to start reading and learning on their own. And obviously, inflation has been a huge. And there's been a lot of inflation since COVID, and things are more and more unaffordable. And I think people are just waking up to the fact that things are not working. I know here in the United States, young people are sort of really upset at the affordability of life. People in their early 20s don't ever think they'll be able to own a house. And so they're sort of becoming very, I don't want to say nihilistic, but just why would I want to work for somebody else if I'm never going to be able to afford these things anyways? I might as well try to work for myself. And so you're seeing people try to like do what you're doing, like maybe podcasting. They're trying to make money on the internet, freelancing, but they want to keep their freedom because maybe it's the only way they feel like they have it because they feel like they've been screwed out of the American dream.
Which is interesting because I see most people that try to start freelancing and try to start a startup probably can relate. Not everyone, but probably most of them can relate. Actually, you have to sacrifice short-term more freedom. So in a way, if you're just working at a company and you're working there 30 or 40 hours a week, you're more free than when you do freelancing, and all of a sudden you're working 24/7, and there's some trade-offs there. But coming back to Bitcoin, what is for you the most exciting topic? Because we talk about so much about Bitcoin. You have a podcast, so you talk about different topics each time you are on a podcast. But if you kind of have to pick one, what is the most exciting topic within Bitcoin this year that you saw? I mean, we had the Suitcoin summer, we had the president, we had treasury companies really big. I think even the Knots versus Core, the technical debates. Is there anything that kind of like stood out to you, or even something that I haven't mentioned?
Yeah, the Knots versus Core debate, I've only dabbled in a little bit. I understand there's a lot of technical like developer things like within that conversation that I don't completely understand. For me, I think what Bitcoin means for individuals, I think, is the most important thing. So, what does it mean to be able to save in a money that appreciates in value, that can't be inflated? by governments. I think that's really important. And so for some people who have been following my podcast, like 3 months ago, I lost my job. I was a teacher before this, and I have a wife and 3 very young kids. And it was a big, unfortunate circumstance, but I had a peace of mind that, hey, for the last 5 years, I've been saving in a money that doesn't depreciate through the debasement of currency, and I had a real sense of peace that like my family would be okay. And I think for me, like that was just a moment to realize, like, man, this is something very unique. This is not something that um, has ever existed before. You lose your job, and you can fall back on something. And if I needed it to, for whatever reason, I could spend it without anybody's permission. I could continue to save it. It can't be taken from me. And there was a peace of mind that came with that. And so I just got to really feel a tangible situation where Bitcoin meant something. It wasn't like this far off thing. It was like, man, because I've seen it grow. I've been in it for 5 years, and I was just really thankful.
How was that? It's like, then you had to spend Bitcoin. Was that easy? Like to save so long and now like having to spend from that?
No, so I guess it was just like more of a, man, if I have to, right? Because obviously I'm not going to just sit on my butt for the next 6 months and not work, right? I'm going to try to make money and provide for my family. But a lot of people are struggling to get new jobs right now. And what if I can't get a new job? Well, at least I would have a means to provide for my family in the short term.
Oh, so you got to directly work again, but in the first reactions of like losing your job, it was not as bad because you knew there was a safety net called Bitcoin that kind of caught you up. Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And just beyond that example, I my father is from Argentina, and so I have family that lives down there. And if anybody knows anything about Argentina, in 2001 they had a huge financial collapse. They've suffered from inflation, probably worse. One of the top few countries in the world. The Argentinian peso has decreased in value like insane amounts over the last 10, 15 years. And I remember I went 2 years ago to visit my grandma, and I took my wife and I took our 2 kids at the time. And just seeing how her mindset towards her money, like I remember I would be out and we would go buy dinner, and she would get upset with me for spending too much money. But in reality, it's like it wasn't that much money at all. But in her mind, like being stuck with these old numbers, right? And for her, it is actually a lot of money. But because the Argentinian peso has depreciated so much against the US dollar, at least, it was insane just to see the firsthand effects of it. And so I know my family, they might prefer to save. Like as soon as they get money, it's better to spend it and buy something, whether it be a car or just something else, something that they can hold on to because they know that every day their money is going to be worth less money. So, and I remember like she had a drawer that she kept her cash in, and I'll never forget this. Like it was just, there was a lot of actual paper money in there, but it was not nearly worth the same amount as it was just a few years prior. And I felt bad because this is one person, but imagine a whole nation trying to save, but their money just gets continually devalued through inflation. we were able to go out to eat one night. I remember my wife and our 2 kids, we went to an all-you-can-eat Argentinian steakhouse. And we all ate like it was a buffet, had a bottle of wine, and it was like $30. It wasn't that bad. Because at that time, I think the US dollar was on the blue dollar was trading like 1,000 pesos to $1. And I think just a year before that, it was like 500. So it's like every year, there's like 100% inflation. It was crazy.
It is crazy to think about the effects of inflation it has. And as you say, like if you live in a country where there is high inflation, you save also in that currency, you are incentivized through high time preference to spend as much as possible right now. It's better to own the car because the car will be worth more in like 2-3 weeks or maybe even 2-3 months. And you rather spend it then spend it now before spending it then. And it's so fun to see how Bitcoin kind of flips that and how different the Bitcoiners are, because now they have the right incentives. Now they see how strong money actually makes a strong mind and a strong body, because you all of a sudden do not have to spend it now. Actually, you're incentivized to spend it as late as possible. So you not only have a better money, so the money gets worth more over time, but also you have more of the money because you're not incentivized to spend it. And so you actually keep more. And so you are actually in this accumulating of capital phase long run. It's fascinating to think about that. And the ideas that come from that. And Argentina is an interesting example also for me, because like the last 2 years, with Javier Milei, they have been fighting, I think, a lot of those things. How do you actually look at, have you observed what's going on in Argentina the last like couple of years?
A little bit. I'm in a group chat with a lot of my uncles and cousins and stuff like that. And so I hear what they're saying every now and then. And, like any politician, like there's good and there's bad. I think they did balance the budget for like the first time in, I don't know how many decades or whatever. So that's good. Yeah. Another thing that is like when people live in a country with like oppressive monetary systems, and the idea of also just being able to send money, like here in the United States, when you introduce somebody to Bitcoin and they can just send Bitcoin to a friend, they're not as impressed as somebody from another country is, because I just think that we've had we've had more freedom here when it comes to sending and receiving money. I know it hasn't been perfect, but it's been a lot better than it has in a lot of other countries. And so I remember I bought a fishing reel for my uncle and I sent it to him, and he was like, okay, how do I pay you back? And I got him on Bitcoin. I introduced it to him. And the fact that he was able to send me Bitcoin to pay me back for this fishing reel with like no banks involved. He was able to stay in the comfort of his own living room. He didn't need anybody's permission. And I think I had actually introduced him to Bitcoin a few months prior to that. So not only that, but like the Bitcoin had accrued in value as well. So the fishing reel cost less than he would have if he would have just paid that same day with the fiat currency. So I think that was a real eye opener, and it was just cool to see somebody else have that experience, and it just completely obliterates everything they're used to.
It's almost like moral money, like if you think about if you completely vanish everything that you know about money and you think about the moral and ethic standard, what a money should do, you would come up with Bitcoin, which is kind of an interesting thought, because everyone can use it. It cannot inflate. Nobody can inflate it. Nobody can stop you from using it. And so it's the ultimate moral money. And also I love the experiment. I sometimes mention it on the podcast. Imagine you die today as yourself, and tomorrow you are reborn as a random individual on this planet Earth. But you don't know who you will be reborn as. So you could be reborn as Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, and you could be one of the richest people on planet Earth. Or you could be in Brazil in a slum and have nothing. And in this situation, before you are getting reborn, what money do you choose? And do you choose the money where you are best protected for your freedom rights in both cases? And so no matter if you are Jeff Bezos on a Bitcoin standard or a Fiat standard, it doesn't really matter to you. Like you will be fine anyways. Banks will be your friend. Bitcoin will be your friend. Like it doesn't really matter if you have a bunch of Bitcoin or a bunch of Fiat. But for someone that lives up in the slums in Brazil, it does matter, because it's a lot easier to get a cheap phone with a cheap internet connection than to actually get a bank account. That's why we have more people on planet Earth that have an internet connection with a phone than we have people that actually have a bank account. So if you think about first principles and ethical money, you choose Bitcoin over everything else, because it's the only way you can ensure if you grow up as someone really, really poor, you have a fighting chance that you actually make it good out of the situation good. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, Bitcoin is the most moral money ever. And I think not a lot of people talk about that. Like we talk about like number go up technology, we talk about ETFs, treasury companies, we talk about you mentioned Square before, like the medium of exchange, all is amazing. But Bitcoin is moral money. Like even if it fails, I'm happy that I supported it, because I know it's the right kind of money and I want to support this mission. Like even if it's completely a failure, I still like to be on the right side of history and support more Bitcoin than support some fiat system, if that makes sense for you.
No, it does. I mean, you laid out a compelling case for why it is a moral money, and that's one of the reasons I like it as well. So I'm a Christian, and one of the 10 commandments is that thou shalt not steal. And so when you use a money where the purchasing power can be stolen from you, that's like a clear reason why you shouldn't use it. There's also some really interesting, so what does a fiat money do, right? Like it keeps people in bondage because you're constantly having to earn more of it. Imagine if you could just take a break and devote some of your newly saved time to a creative project, towards growing a family. But fiat, it steals more time out of your future. So you have to spend more time to earn more of it, to buy less things. And so I don't think it's an exaggeration to call it a form of slavery. Now, some people might get mad at that, but slavery takes many different forms, right? Like you can have chattel slavery, there's indentured servitude, but nobody ever talks about like monetary financial slavery, right? You know, the fiat system has permitted just predatory lending. So here in the United States, like and I'm sure it happens everywhere, but like super high interest rates, like the amount of advertising that credit card companies spend every year to entice people into spending more and more, and then getting tied up in debt, and then they have to use this dirty fiat currency to try and pay everything back. And meanwhile, every year the government is depreciating their money, and people can never get ahead. Like I consider that a form of slavery, which would be sinful. And so why use a money that allows that sort of to flourish?
I love what you said there. You shall not steal. And fiat money steals from all of us. Like, not from all of us. Fiat money steals from everyone that saves in fiat money. And so it is by definition a very unreligious thing to use fiat money. It's a weird way to look at it, but how do you actually, as a Christian, like, how do you see the connection between Bitcoin and religion? There's so many, like, there's Pastor Coin, for example. There are people that actually draw, like, even within books, the connection there. But then there are also people that get really mad of saying, like, oh, like religion is Bitcoin is something completely different. But then you look at how Bitcoin is kind of there. It's like there is the element of a mystical origin story. Satoshi Nakamoto, we don't know. Is he a man, a woman, a group of people? Then there is meetups. So we meet every week or every month in our local communities. There's those big get-togethers where we come together and celebrate Bitcoin. So there's a lot of almost religious kind of elements towards Bitcoin. How do you see kind of the connection between religion and Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fascinating connection. I know Alan, so Pastor Coin. I actually had him on my podcast at one point. He's a great guy. So it's interesting. There's definitely not a consensus, especially within Christianity. And I think within Christianity specifically, we're still so early when it comes to accepting Bitcoin. I think Christians have been incorrectly weary of money for a very long time. And I think because there might just be like there's this understanding that, right, the love of money is evil, right? Jesus talks about that. He says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. And you could take that and say, man, I should never think about money. I should never want more of it, and it's bad to want it, and it's just a corrupting thing. And I think that that's just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I do not think that that's wise. I think money is a gift from God. Money is a tool. So money is not inherently evil, and money is not inherently good. It's a tool that allows just an economy to sort of take place, right? Like, if we can have a medium of exchange, people can specialize in their own fields. Like, you no longer need Johnny to make bread, harvest food, and raise cows and get milk. And like, he can just specialize in whatever he's best at, because then he can trade for a money where he can go and take and redeem that money for something else. And that allows people to be more productive with what they're good at. So money, I would actually say, allows people to specialize in what they're good at, and people flourish as a result of that. And I would say that that's good. But the Bible has a lot to say about money. It tells us to be careful with the love of money. There's plenty of examples of, both in the Bible and just in the real world, where greed corrupts a person. But I think, when you have money and you remain like level-headed, and you remember what your real purpose is, like, your real purpose in life is not to accumulate money. That's not what I believe it is, at least. But if you have money and you remember your true purpose, it actually allows you to be more generous. So a lot of the hospitals, libraries, public parks in the United States, most of them, to my understanding, at one point, like the late 1800s and the very early 1900s, that's when a lot of these hospitals were formed, and they were built out of like charitable donations from really wealthy people. It wasn't because of an operational fiat system of money. It was because people were able to be generous because they kept almost 100% of their money. So if I kept 100% of my paycheck, I could guarantee you I would be more generous. I would have more money to give away to feed people who are hungry. And I could actually carry out, I think, better the institutes of the Christian faith better if I had more money at my disposal. Not that that's everything, but it certainly is a powerful tool. And the Bible says that a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. How do you leave an inheritance to your children's children if you're being debased constantly? And you can't. And so, yeah, there's a lot of interesting connections between Christianity and Bitcoin and philosophy and Bitcoin. And I do think there's a lot of idolatry in Bitcoin as well. I do not believe Satoshi Nakamoto is a god. I don't think most people believe that, but oftentimes people can talk about it that way. And I think he was probably just a man or a group or whatever. But just because we don't know his identity doesn't mean he's a deity. It's like we don't know who invented fire, and we don't necessarily worship that person. We can appreciate the genius and the brilliance and be forever thankful, I think. But I would actually submit that to God's plan for humanity. And God used Satoshi Nakamoto to create a money that was brilliant and can free people from the bondage of monetary oppression.
I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I had an interesting thought. I thought about, as you said, the people are not as generous as they could be because of fiat money and because of taxes and because of the fiat system. And if you think about it, you work hard, you go into a job, and then you get financial energy. On that financial energy, you already, on that income that you have, you get taxed like 40%, 50%. I mean, gosh, some people even get taxed 55%.
Yeah.
So they get taxed more than they actually earn for themselves. Then you pay rent, which there is a tax on. Then you buy food, which there's a tax on. Then you want to invest a little bit. If you take profits out of that, you get taxed from that. And then with the remaining little money that you still have, you save it. But there is the inflation tax that comes and steals the rest of it. And so then it's like,
can I say one more?
Yeah, of course.
Rising prices as a result of inflation. So not only that is like there's actually the cost of goods are actually going up. Meanwhile, all that's taking place.
Oh, but that is inflation, right?
Yeah, but then there's all like I kind of view it as like your money actually buys less. Why? Like I think it happens at both ends. You know, like prices always don't go up equally across the board, but the power of the money sort of does, and so I think you can get hit at both ends.
Oh yeah, it's true. Like if you, it depends on how you define inflation, I guess, because you can also define inflation as just like the devaluation of the of your euros, your dollars, your whatever you use. This doesn't mean at the same rate that the prices rise or that the prices stay the same, because and this is one thing I learned from Jeff Booth, is the inflation is not from zero. The inflation of a price is from -5 or -6, because naturally prices should actually fall in price because of competitive markets, because we're getting more efficient. And that's why prices actually should decline. So if we have we're expanding the monetary supply by, let's say, 10%, costs of goods probably only rise with 5 or 6% per year, because we have to measure from the effectiveness and the productiveness that we are kind of building, like AI and a tractor on a land. Like if you think about without tractors, we would still need to go on the lands and like pick everything up ourselves, which includes more human time, which then would rise the price of everything. If then there's 5 tractors doing the same work as 100 people, this dramatically decreases the cost. Now with AI, if now there's like a team of people that does a job, and now one guy with AI can do the same thing, this will decrease the prices. And so yeah, there's definitely a difference between the rising costs of good and the devaluation of your own currency. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Jeff Booth talks about it all the time. He's like, you have to measure it from where we should be given the, gosh, what's the word? It's early. You have to basically measure it from where the, because the costs should be going down because of automation and the increases in technology. And so like, if you factor in like what the natural, like where we actually should be, the theft is staggering.
Yeah. Technology is a deflationary force, I think he always says. It's like it actually brings the prices down, and everything else is like the monetary expansion then brings the prices up. That's why the central banks are aiming for like 2%. Maybe they change it now to 3%, because this is a small enough inflation so they can keep stealing purchasing power, but still people don't really care. If the money is just like inflating with 2%, people don't really care. the problem that they have is once you start inflating, the inflating just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you really don't have like, it's just like, it's designed to fail.
Yeah. And you mentioned it, high time preference. Like, what does that instill in a people? It's a subtle message to say, hey, spend your money now, indulge the flesh now. And I mean, what are the effects that bleed out from that? I think it just teaches people to be more focused on the present, like having a super high time preference. And so it doesn't only affect your money. I think it teaches people to not delay their gratification for something greater. So they're giving in to all of these in the moment decisions. And usually, most people have given in to the decisions of the moment, and usually they're not very good ones. They're decisions that are very impulsive, and the downstream effects of making impulsive decisions is usually never good. Or making decisions out of fear is usually never a good thing. And I think people settle for cheap things now rather than beautiful things in the future. I mean, one critique I have of modernity right now, and I think this might be actually tied to the money. It'd be interesting to try to trace it, but just like casual hookup culture here today is sort of appalling. And I think it's because one reason is because people are settling for the instant gratification of today, right now, rather than building something that lasts in the future. I like this question. Like, if you had a kid, like say you had like a 20-year-old young man, and you could say to him, in 1 year, you will meet the woman of your dreams. She's a 10. She will love you. Your entire family will love her. And she's just an amazing woman. You will meet her in 1 year, and she will give you children, and you will have an amazing life together. But you actually can't sleep around for the next year. You can't do that. I think the decision would be that I think it would be very easy to say, "Oh, I can actually wait," right? Because you actually know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But in the fiat world, it's just you're always getting stolen from. That guarantee is not there, right? You don't see any appreciation, and so I think people are always just constantly giving in to the desires of the moment. And whether it be in spending, committing a crime rather than working, sleeping around rather than building a family. And I think they're all connected, to be honest.
I have an interesting one. I think hookup culture is here for the same reason that meme coins are here. So it has something to do with your values. If you have a high standard, and if you have a low time preference, you do not do hookups. And I tell you why. If you go to a bar and your standard is, and your low time preference says, I want to find a girl that I can be with for the rest of my life, versus I want to find a girl for tonight. Those are two very different situations. If you just want to find a girl for tonight, I would guess 80 or 90% of the girls in that bar are potentially okay for you, because you only spend the night. Like, it doesn't matter that much. If your standard is, I want to be with her for the rest of my life, your standards are a lot higher. And I always suggest to people, do this the same way with everything. Ask yourself, could I be with her for the rest of my life? And of course, in a bar, you cannot find it out. So that's why you take it all of a sudden slow. You're like, okay, let's get to know each other. We found each other now in this bar, but I want to invite you tomorrow for coffee and not sleep tonight with you, because this could be a weird start for a long-term relationship. And so you take things slower, you take things better, and you actually get to know a person before you invite them closer in. Because maybe after one coffee, you get to know like, oh, like our values don't match, like we cannot, like that just doesn't work. And the same way with investments. Ask yourself before you invest any money anywhere, can I be with that investment for the rest of my life? If you think about a meme coin, if you think about some kind of frog token, will you put all your money for the rest of your life in there? Yes or no? If you say yes, okay, your decision. But most probably won't say yes. Most say no, it's just a gambling thing for the short term. And then most people would actually be Bitcoin only, because that's the only thing I feel, at least, that is with a high certainty still there in like 100 years. I don't know if it's still there, but if I look at everything that is right now here, the most high certain for me personally that is still here and has a greater value than now is Bitcoin. And so that's why I put my money into Bitcoin. And that's why I took it slow with my girl. And now I'm with her since soon 3 years. I know I have to put a ring on that finger. But everything at the time. But it's, like, to make every decision in your life as it would be the last decision you could make. Obviously, things can still not work out. Like maybe after half a year of dating with a person, you still kind of figure out, okay, I found out it's not there. But don't sleep around like that. Like, it doesn't bring you any joy. Like that it doesn't do anything for you. And that has this weird influence to say like, oh, like you have to sleep with 100 girls. Like, no, you don't. Like, it's just wasted time.
No, you make great points. I think when people are unsure about the future, they make irrational decisions. And so how do you become as sure as possible, right? Because you might not achieve 100% certainty on anything, right? But through education, through taking your time, through thinking rationally, you can actually become pretty convinced about certain things. And I think that can give people more patience. Kind of like what I was saying earlier about the guys. Like, it would be easy to be patient if you knew in 1 year you were going to meet the woman of your dreams. It would be so easy if you could be guaranteed, right? But if you let's talk about money. Like, if you could be guaranteed that a money will appreciate in value, it would be easy to be patient, right? Now, with Bitcoin, obviously, we're not guaranteed, but I think it's our best shot. And with fiat currency, we know we are guaranteed to lose value. So we can't be patient with fiat currency because it incentivizes us to spend it now.
Okay, guys. Unfortunately, Matthew had massive internet connectivity issues, and we tried for like 10 minutes to straighten it out. He already had issues beforehand, but that's why he unfortunately had to go. Gosh, that sounds horrible. But he unfortunately couldn't connect again, and so we still unfortunately have the end routines open, and the question like, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? I think I will probably just do a second round with him, and then we can ask him this question at some point else. There is the question from the previous guest that came to him, and and the previous guest asked him, what is the biggest threat to humanity currently? Oh, wait. Maybe he's back on. Let's see one more time. Maybe he's coming back. Hey, Matthew, how are you doing? I still don't hear you, but maybe you're back.
How about now?
Yeah, you're back. Awesome.
Okay. We are back, baby. Here we go.
I was just actually I was just making a solo episode out of it, and I was telling the people that we had internet issues, but now we have you back on, and I would just now get to kind of the end routine of the podcast, and there's one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and the question is for you: what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
That's a great question. It's not one that I often think about, but I think if I were to try to teach somebody something, it would be that, and this is going to, everybody's greatest need is God. And I believe that as a Christian, we need to be reconciled to God through Jesus Christ. And money is not everything. It is a tool, but that is our greatest need. And, I would just preach the message that kind of we were talking about just before this is like, don't settle for things that are cheap, fake, and fleeting, but get right with God and start building things that will last. Build beautiful works of art, build beautiful families. And, I'm in the middle of building a family right now, and it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life. And I think that fits like a glove with the Bitcoin mindset of carrying value forward into the future. And so I don't know if that's really learning something from me more than just something I hope people pursue, is this idea of not settling for cheap, quick, and easy, but labor intensive, hard, day in and day out, loving your family, loving your children, and trying to be an example to them and building the type of world that you want them to live in. That those who are coming up after us in our generation, like, let's build the world that we want them to inherit. And I think that's a message of hope, and it gives us purpose.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that message. And I think it's very important that we put that message out as much as possible. So thank you so much for that, for sharing that. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you a really interesting and maybe also deep question. What do you think is the biggest threat to humanity currently?
I think it's ourselves, to be honest. I think humanity's greatest threat to humanity is humanity's greatest threat. And I think the reason being is because we so often sacrifice what it means to be a human for progress. So one example is, and this is kind of tied into technology, but technological progress is not the same thing as human progress. And we really need to think about how we protect human progress while we're pursuing technological progress. Because we lose what it means to be human every time technology progresses. There's always collateral damage. And, like just the other day, on Halloween, a couple days before, I was trying to invite all my neighbors over to my house in my driveway because we were going to do like this Halloween thing and do like hot cider and cookies and just trying to build neighborhood, a sense of neighborly love, right? And for a lot of my neighbors, me knocking on their door was annoying to them. I think they would have rather received a text message, or they would have rather received a phone call, or prefer that I not actually knock on their door at all. And I think, we've pursued talking on the phone and texting and just isolating ourselves, that we've sacrificed a very core aspect of what it means to be a human, and that is community with other people in real life, in person, face to face. And that was one of the things that was lost through technological innovation. And so I think when we pursue technological progress, we have to really be thinking about what will we gain and what will we lose. Neil Postman, one of my favorite authors, he says that technology giveth and taketh away. And I tend to see more of what it takes away. And so with AI and virtual reality, I tend to see more what could potentially be lost, and some of the downstream effects for humanity could just be forfeiting entirely what it means to be a human. And I think that's being in connection with other people in real life, and obviously over the internet when it's not possible to be in person. But I think that's probably the greatest threat.
Yeah, humanity is the biggest threat to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I agree to that. If we can probably survive if we really want to. The question is if we really want to. Let's see. We'll figure out in a few hundreds of years or a few more decades to see how far we've come. Then thank you so much, Matthew, already for being on and being such a great guest. We got a lot of interesting things. I think this episode had a lot of deepness in it and philosophy in it that I really appreciate coming from you. And so before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions and reach out to you?
Yeah, so I think the best place for now is on X. And so you can find me at realmastro21, and you'll see links to my YouTube channel, and reach out to me. I love talking to anybody. So that's the best place for now. My podcast is called The Great Reassessment. So you can just search that on YouTube or Spotify, The Great Reassessment Podcast. And it's all there. Do I get to ask a question to the guest?
Absolutely, you get. I usually do it offline, but if you already have one, please go ahead.
I think I want to know, what is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, and what did you learn from it? And would you trade it? Like, if you could make it so that never happened, would you have done it? It might be kind of a personal question, but I think it's a good one.
I love that one. No, it's a really good one. I've never thought about that question. Interesting. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Looking forward to asking the next guest in actually already 45 minutes. The question. So thank you so much for being on, and also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.